My name is Charles Williams, and I'm here with SQL Trigger Shenanigans. It's a short guide to taking your SQL injection attacks a few steps farther. Now, it all started out one day in database when I was thinking, what if? Can I use an SQL injection to add a trigger to a target database? Now, a trigger is a type of database object that's created on a table. It will trigger when a specific action, for example, insert, update, or delete, is performed on that table. And they can be used to execute alternative code to the query that is attempting to modify or access the table. For example, if the original command is insert into my table, column 1, column 2, the values this is legit data. The trigger can be used to intercept this query and run its own code instead, pulling the variables from the original statement. So it can change the first statement into the second, insert into rogue table, select all columns from the inserted data. Now, my first thought was, what can I do with such a useful little ability? Could I have the target server send me user data? Say anytime a user changes a password, or anytime a user is added? And a bonus to using triggers is that they are often overlooked, especially when investigating database issues. I know I overlook them myself, and I know a couple other people who tend to, so I decided to investigate further. Now, the main catch with this technique is that it relies on the application having sufficient permissions. If the database admin is doing their job correctly, the application won't be able to create database objects. Then again, if they were doing their job right, you shouldn't be able to inject commands into the server in the first place. Now, this first step is to gather some table info. Just figure out which table you want to target. So we'll do a union select, get the table names, and select from the information schema database utility. It's great because it can provide you so much information about so many different types of database objects. It can, in some ways, effectively be your map for everything you need to navigate farther into the database and figure out what does and what goes where. So once we have the table, we want to select the column name and the column types from that table so we know what we can inject into, because remember, we're going to need to be able to inject a string. Now, to determine our target table, we're going to want to run that script we just reviewed. And as we can see, we have our result from searching for users, Bob, and we have now discovered that there is in fact a users table. Step 3, construct our query. Now that we know what the tables are, so we want to have our escape characters, and then we want to declare our script variable as a invar max, because it's easier just to do it that way so that you have as much space as you need. And we're going to set that variable equal to our string that we're planning to inject. In this case, it's just going to be a very simple trigger that all it does is declare a variable. So we'll have create trigger and then name the trigger, in this case test, on the database object users. And for insert, which is stating, instead of inserting something into the database, do this instead. And then we are declaring our junk variable, just test, as again, another invar variable character length string. It's all good. And then we are closing that injection string, and then we're going to tell it to execute that script variable that we just assigned a value. Now, here's a little bit of a closer look. Again, we have our escape characters, and then we declare our script variable. And next, we give it a value. So we're going to set the script variable equal to our trigger string. And, of course, we define the trigger here. And finally, we execute it as a script. It's awesome. And so here we go, Bob declare add SQL and varchar. And as we see, well, it returned Bob. There were no errors. Hopefully it executed correctly. And as we see, we do in fact have a database trigger test. I set up this window so that it would automatically list any database triggers that were on the database. And we now have tests. So there's a key thing here. Sorry, the key thing here is that we are encapsulating our injection string into a SQL variable, where we have declare at SQL and varchar max, set SQL blah 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 blah, and then we're executing it as a special SQL script. Now this is pretty cool because it allows us to run commands that normally would be impossible to run with normal injection attacks. For example, as I've shown, creating triggers, running certain database commands, or altering or creating stored procedures or functions. Sometimes you can't run commands because they cannot be run in the middle of a query and it has to be at the beginning, and there's all these other kinds of restrictions, but this lets us bypass all of them. Now, the implications of this, you're not just limited to triggers. Theoretically, you should be able to run any script that you would run in your primary database interface, such as Microsoft SQL Database Management Studio, which I happen to be using. You could create drop tables, which is easy enough to do in the first place. Go ahead and add, modify key constraints, cause a little bit of havoc. Alter stored procedures and functions. Now, this is one that you shouldn't be able to do normally, but you're able to because you're encapsulating it into another variable. Or you can just add your own procedures or functions. Now, the best part is transmitting the data once you're done. Sorry, having the trigger transmit data for you, I should say. There's two possible ways that I know of. You can transfer it over email or over link servers. The email will only work if they have the database email enabled. I have no idea how common that is, but it's worth a shot. It can be aggravating to set up, but it is possible. Link servers are the other method, and those kind of create a... they can mirror parts of the database, or they can act as interfaces to other programs, such as Excel, etc. Now, to set up your email account, assuming that they have mail enabled, you first have to execute Microsoft database object, sysmail, add account, supply all these variables. Then you have to add a profile, and then you have to add a profile account, and then you've got to add a principal profile. This hectic thing that's confusing and irritating and won't always work. But if it can, oh boy, you're getting updated user information on the fly. Now, when you're set up the trigger for the injection string for email in this instance, as you see, we have our previous injection script here, except that I've modified its functions so that it declares body, again, as a character string, and it's selecting the username and password from the inserted data. So, say a new user is created, it'll grab their username and password from that submitted data and set that as the value of the body. And then we're going to execute the command master xp sendmail and provide it all of the variables that are needed, such as recipients, message, body, and subject. And finally, again, we are executing this command so that it is run on the database itself. You do want to note that when declaring strings inside of this that are literal, I'm going to be using two single quotes here. Very important. Link servers, as I mentioned, they can be used to interface with other applications such as Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, but they can also be used as a kind of backup or mirror of the original server. This will allow you to execute commands on your target server that will update a server you have running remotely, and it'll send updated user information and everything to that server whenever it's triggered, which is awesome because then you can get effectively a duplicate of their entire database. And if you set it up right, you can just duplicate the entire thing and have live updates of all of the data. So to set up a link server, you're going to use the command sp add link server. You're going to need to provide the server, the product, provider, data source, location, that kind of stuff. But I was not able to get this set up. Wasn't able to get my hands on the right software, but should be doable. I plan to try it in the near future. So, in the end, after you have all these scripts run, all you have to do is sit back, relax, and watch the user data roll in. Thank you.